To keep yourself updated, subscribe to Indigo Learn and click the bell icon and download our app OneFin to start learning on the go.
We just looked at what are the records to be maintained by an agent. Now let me also tell you, my dear friends, what are the records to be maintained by a manufacturer. So let's say, for example, there is one person, Mr. A, who is engaged in manufacturing biscuits. Now what are the records that Mr. A is required to maintain? We know the general records what is required to maintain, that is the details of production or manufacture of goods, details of inward supply, outward supply, details of stock of goods, and details of input tax credit, details of output tax payable and paid. This is a general point or general records what every person is required to maintain. That is, every registered person is required to maintain. Now, in case of manufacturer, apart from this normal general records, he is also required to maintain quantitative details of the raw material, whatever he has used in manufacturing. For example, when A is engaged in manufacturing biscuit, what are the raw materials which have gone into manufacturing of the biscuit? Mr. A should maintain a track record of that quantitative details of the raw material, and also should maintain details of any input service taken for the purpose of manufacturing. And also finally, he should maintain quantitative details of the finished product which has been produced. That is, quantitative details of biscuits that have been produced. Apart from this, my dear friends, one last point I'll tell you there for manufacturer is that manufacturer should also maintain details or records pertaining to the waste or scrap generated or any byproduct which has been generated. Because there is a possibility that in the course of manufacturing one product, some other byproduct may emerge. And during the course of manufacture, there is some waste or scrap which is generated, and there is a possibility that the waste or scrap also may be supplied or it may be disposed of. Any possibility is there. So apart from normal records, he should maintain these additional records related to quantitative details of raw materials, and also the details of input services, and also the quantitative details of the finished goods which have been produced. In the same lines, if you look at what are the records to be maintained by service provider, that is somebody like Shivateja who is engaged in supplying services. Normal records, very common, that is inward supply, outward supply, stock of goods. Is there anything that stock of goods is not possible because I am service provider. But what are additional records? I should also maintain records of quantitative details of any goods what I have procured for the purpose of supplying my service. For example, when I am Shivateja engaged in supplying services, there is a possibility that for my office use, I would have procured some stationery, I would have procured some laptop or any particular goods which are used for the purpose of supplying service. So I should maintain proper records and details related to the goods what I have taken for supplying service, or any other input service I have taken to supply service. For example, guys, when I am sitting at my office, there is a telephone what I am using, and there is a telephone bill which is coming, and on that telephone bill there is a GST which is charged, and that GST I can claim it as input tax credit, and that is nothing but input service for Shivateja. So that details also I should maintain, and also finally the details of services which have been supplied. So in simple terms, I am maintaining details of my input services, and also the goods what I have procured, and also the services what I have supplied. Now we look at some very interesting and important point, and this point came in exam couple of times for about 2 marks, and there is also a possibility that a question may trigger in exam for multiple choice question also. Now what is that? Listen carefully, guys. Friends, when we talk about somebody who is a owner or operator of a warehouse or godown, and we are talking about a transporter who will maintain the stock in his godown or warehouse. Now what is the interesting point they are given in the law is that this owner or operator of warehouse or godown and every transporter, whether they are registered or they are not registered, they should still maintain the details of consignor, consignee, and also the details of goods that are being transported. And some fantastic point which you should know very clearly is that in case where this owner or operator of warehouse or godown or the transporter is an unregistered person, possibility is there, right? Because registration is mandatory only when aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit. So if aggregate turnover does not exceed threshold limit, then registration is not mandatory. So there is a possibility that these guys are not registered person. That is, owner or operator of warehouse or godown or a transporter may not be a registered person. And in any case, if they are not registered person, then they should obtain a unique enrollment number under GST. So idea of the government is very simple. My dear operator of warehouse or godown owner, warehouse owner, very good. If you are not registered, we are okay. But we want you to obtain a unique enrollment number, because we want to trace where are the godowns, where are the warehouses, because that is the place where the stock is kept. Now, one interesting point here is that when we talk about unique enrollment number, it is not that it is common for across India. It is, for example, if a unique enrollment number is obtained in Karnataka, it is valid only in the state of Karnataka. That is the reason why an interesting point what they told is that, let's take an example of a transport company. For example, let's say there is one transport company known as PQR Transporters. Now, if PQR Transporters has got place of business in Maharashtra, Gujarat, Punjab. Come on. PQR Transporters has place of business in Maharashtra, Gujarat, Punjab. Now, in these three places, they will have separate GST number, even though PAN is same, because we know that they are regarded as distinct persons, where the PAN is same, but GST number is different. Because under GST law, registration is to be obtained state-wise. So this PQR Transporters has obtained separate registration in Maharashtra, Gujarat and Punjab. Now these guys, what they can do is, at the time of applying for enrollment number, they can apply for unique common enrollment number for all the states together by quoting all the GST numbers of all the states together. Clear, guys? And it is the responsibility of the transporter to maintain records related to the consignor, consignee, GST number of the consignor, consignee, and the details of the goods that are being transported. These details should definitely be maintained by the transporter. And finally, once the transporter has got that unique common enrollment number, while generating e-way bill, he will use that number only. He will not use any GST number. Friends, the point what I am trying to tell you is that we all know very clearly that e-way bill is mandatory only when there is a movement of goods of consignment value exceeding 50,000. Where in e-way bill there are two parts, part A and part B. Part A is generally filled by the person who is supplying the goods. Part B is normally filled by transporter, where you give the details of the vehicle number and everything details related to the vehicle is given in part B of e-way bill. Now the interesting point to be noted is that transporter, if he has got a unique common enrollment number, at the time of generating that e-way bill, he will quote his unique common enrollment number. He will not quote any of his GST number. And with respect to finally about owner or operator of warehouse or godown, that particular person should maintain proper records related to whose goods are those particular goods which are lying in that godown or warehouse. For example, my dear friends, there is a possibility that there is one person, Mr. Akash. Akash is owner of a warehouse. In Akash warehouse, there are goods belonging to Mr. A, B and C. Now, Akash should clearly segregate the goods belonging to A, belonging to B, belonging to C. Should separate the goods owner-wise and also separate the goods item-wise, so that tomorrow when proper officer wants to come and check the goods in the warehouse, that is, if proper officer wants to come and inspect the goods, he should be in a position to happily identify them. So in the warehouse, it is important that the goods are to be segregated owner-wise as well as item-wise. And it is also responsibility of the owner or operator of the warehouse to ensure that he maintain proper details related to the goods as to how long the goods have been lying in the godown, the period for which the goods are there in that warehouse, and he should also maintain the records related to the dispatch, removal, bringing of the goods, when the goods have come, when goods have left the godown, and also the details related to disposal of the goods. So every movement of the goods should be tracked and should be recorded by the owner or operator of warehouse or godown. Next point. Now let's discuss what are the records to be maintained by a custodian or clearing and forwarding agent. Who is a clearing and forwarding agent? In short, we always call him as C&F agent. C&F agent is somebody who takes the goods from principal and supplies goods on behalf of principal, for which he will get commission income. Correct, right? This is very common business where generally lot of companies in respective states, they appoint C&F agent, clearing and forwarding agent, whose activity is only to ensure that he will properly get the goods from the company, supply to the recipients, and then get the commission from the particular company. Now it is important that this particular clearing forwarding agent, also called as custodian, should ensure that they maintain proper, true and correct account related to the goods maintained by them and the goods supplied by them on behalf of any other registered person. And that record should be sufficient enough so that tomorrow when proper officer wants to come and inspect, proper officer should be satisfied with the maintenance of accounts and records. Now let's also look at what are the records to be maintained by a person executing works contract. First of all, my dear friends, we all know what is works contract. Works contract is a contract. Generally, we use this word in relation to immovable property where there is element of goods and services both which have been involved. For example, construction contract where they use element of goods as well as services. And prior to GST law, we always had a confusion that whether works contract is a goods or it is service because it contains both the elements of goods and service. And we used to charge VAT also, service tax also. But under GST law, my dear friends, let me tell you, they have clearly clarified that works contract is deemed to be a service. And now let me also tell you what are the details that are required to be maintained by a person executing works contracts. Number one, he should maintain names and address of the person on behalf of whom the works contract is executed. So for example, if Mr. A is executing works contract on behalf of Mr. X, now A should maintain the names and address of Mr. X and also other persons on whose behalf the works contract is executed. Then the person executing works contract should also maintain details related to description, quantity and value of the goods as well as services which have been received in relation to execution of works contract. And he should also maintain the details of quantity, value, description of the goods and services utilized in execution of works contract. Please understand, second point I told you, description, quantity and value of the goods and services received in execution of works contract. Third point I told, details of description, quantity, value of the goods and services utilized in execution of works contract. So second record is related to the goods received. Third record is related to the goods which have been utilized. Then fourth point, names and address of the suppliers from whom he has procured the goods and services. So what is the fourth point, my dear friends? Names and address of the suppliers from whom he procured the goods. Please understand that first point, fourth point is different. First point is names and address of the person on whose behalf the contract is executed. Fourth point is names and address of the suppliers from whom he procured goods and services. Finally, he will also maintain details and records related to payment received with respect to each works contract. So these are the various details or records which are required to be maintained by a person executing works contract. Friends, please keep in mind all this information is not given in section 35 but it is given in Rule 56. Rule 56 talks about all these points with respect to what are the records to be maintained in each specific circumstances. And as we discussed already, my dear friends, all these accounts and records, whatever we discussed so far, to be maintained by manufacturer, service provider, agent, and just now we discussed about the concept of person executing works contract. All these records, whatever we are discussing, it's not that they should be maintained in physical form only. There is also a possibility that records may be maintained in electronic form. Practically, a lot of people use their own accounting customized softwares or packages which are available in the market. So records may be maintained in electronic form also. And it's very important that that record should be properly authenticated and properly maintained. And law specifies that it should be properly authenticated and secured by means of a digital signature. so that unauthorized person will not access that accounts and records. So records may be maintained in physical form or in electronic form. And it is also important that proper timely backup is also taken for that electronic data, because in the event of any unforeseen event such as maybe fire accident or anything occurred because of which some data is destroyed or lost, in that case that backup will help. Generally what happens is that practically we always ensure that we maintain records in electronic form, and that data backup is also stored on cloud. We maintain the storage on the cloud so that by any reason if the data is lost or destroyed, we will retrieve the data back from the cloud or digital storage. Whenever records are maintained in electronic form, there is a possibility that proper officer may demand the records maintained in electronic form. So for example, let's say there is one person, Mr. Prakash. Prakash is a registered person who is engaged in the business of manufacturing fans. And this person, Mr. Prakash, is maintaining records in a customized accounting software. There is no physical record at all. All the details are maintained and all the accounts and record, everything is maintained in electronic customized software only. Now when proper officer is asking Prakash to submit the documents, what Prakash can do is he can take few printouts as a sample copy, and along with that he can also provide the backup of the data in readable form. What they generally do is maybe they convert it to Excel spreadsheets, or there is a possibility that the backup is being taken on a pen drive and that pen drive can be submitted to the proper officer, so that for proper officer it will be readable as well as understandable. And if Prakash is using any shortcuts or any codes in that software, he should ensure that he will give that codes to the proper officer as to what does that code symbolize and signifies. Only then proper officer will be able to properly verify and check the records. And by any chance, if there is any password for a particular file, it is a responsibility of Prakash to ensure that he will submit details of all the passwords so that proper officer can access the file and check the content. Now one doubt what you can get is that, sir, sometime back you told us that in case where there is an additional place of business or more than one place of business, records related to each place of business should be kept at such place of business only. Now when you are maintaining records in electronic form, how is it possible, sir? For that reason, what language they have given in the law is that in case where the records are maintained in physical form, records related to every place of business shall be kept at such place of business. However, records are maintained in electronic form, then at every place of business, those records should be accessible. That means in that place of business, you should be in a position to sit and access that electronic record. That is sufficient. And by any chance, if the records are maintained manually or physical records, then those records or each volume of that record should be serially numbered so that it can be verified properly and effectively. And general provision what law has given is that once an entry is made in the accounts and records, that entry should not be erased or overwritten. You cannot remove that entry or overwrite on that entry. That is generally not permitted, and that is the reason why what they have specified in the law is that there should be complete log and track of every entry recorded, erased or overwritten. Everything should be properly maintained, and that is the reason why recently also one interesting concept has come up where Ministry of Corporate Affairs is trying to come up with one proposal where they are saying that every company should use such kind of accounting software where there is a audit trail. When I say audit trail, that means which gives a record of when is the entry posted, when is the entry modified, when is the entry deleted, when is a new entry passed. All that track record or that complete log should be generated. Of course, presently it is deferred, but when it comes and made mandatory, then done. It's very important that track record should be maintained for every particular entry which is posted, which is overwritten, which is erased, which is modified, which is deleted. So this is all the story of this beautiful concept given by section 35, accounts and records. And as I told you, we have got one more section also to talk, that is section 36. That's a very small section, but all said and done, 35 talks about what are the accounts and records that are required to be maintained. 36 talks about how long that accounts and records are to be retained. What are to be maintained is given by 35. How long to retain is given by 36. And in 35, we also discussed some very interesting point that every registered person whose aggregate turnover exceeds threshold limit, he should get his books of accounts audited by practicing chartered accountant or cost accountant. Correct, friends? And that practicing chartered accountant or cost accountant will prepare a reconciliation statement and submit in form GSTR 9C, reconciling the differences between audited annual accounts and GSTR 9. And one point I already told you that practically this GST audit is applicable only to those whose aggregate turnover is more than 5 crores. In fact, as per law, you might find that word 2 crores, but practically it has been enhanced to 5 crores. And government also came up with one proposal where they are planning to remove this GST audit and introduce a concept of self-certified reconciliation statement in GSTR 9 itself. That means they are planning to remove 9C, and in GSTR 9 itself, they will prepare, that means the client or taxable person himself will prepare a reconciliation statement and he will self-certify. Of course, for that also, he will require services of chartered accountant or cost accountant. Generally, he will not do by himself. He will definitely seek our support and we will support him. Of course, professionally. No doubt about it. Clear? So this is the story of this beautiful section, section 35, accounts and records, what are to be maintained and how they are required to be maintained. Now let's talk about section 36. As I told you, my dear friends, section 36 doesn't talk about what records to be maintained. Section 36 only talks about retention of that books of accounts and records. 35 is about what to be maintained. 36 about how long to be retained. Simple concept, guys. Section 36 specifies that all the books of accounts and records, what we discussed in section 35, should be retained for a period of 72 months. 72 months is something like 6 years. But 72 months from when? That is important. The books of accounts and records specified in section 35 should be retained for a period of 72 months from the due date of filing annual return. In general, guys, what is the due date of filing annual return? As per section 44, 44 talks about annual return. In general, the due date to file annual return is 31st December of next financial year. So in simple terms, 31st December of the year following the end of the year. So it is something like, if you look at financial year 21-22, for financial year 21-22, the due date to file annual return is 31st December 2022. From there, 72 months means from there it is something like 6 years. That is 31st December 2028. So in simple terms, records pertaining to financial year 21-22 should be maintained for a span of 72 months from due date of filing annual return. So for 21-22, due date to file annual return is 31st December 2022. From there, 72 months is 31st December 2028. So in simple terms, records pertaining to 21-22 should be retained up to 31st December 2028. Finally, one special point in this section, with this 36 will be done. What is the special point? Please listen. Sir, let's say, for example, there is one person, Mr. Anand, who is maintaining the records and is retaining the records for a span of 72 months from due date of filing annual return. Now, Akash, there is some appeal proceedings or revision proceedings or some adjudication proceedings or some offense related proceedings or investigation is going on with respect to Akash, and there are some records and accounts related to that appeal, revision or investigation. In that case, what they told is that this records or this documents related to that appeal or revision or investigation should be retained for a span of 1 year after disposal of that appeal or revision or investigation, or a period of 72 months from due date of filing annual return, whichever is later. They did not say earlier, they told later. If they tell later only, they'll get more time. So what they told very clearly is that these records which are pertaining to the appeal, investigation or revision which is going on, those records should be retained for a span of 1 year from the date of disposal of that appeal. Disposal means passing of order of that appeal or revision or investigation, or the general time limit. What is the general time limit? 72 months from due date of filing annual return. These two, whichever is later. So for example, my dear friends, as we discussed some time back, for 21-22, we have time till 31st December 2028. Correct? Yes. Now, let's say with respect to this person Anand, some appeal was going on and there are some records related to that appeal. And let's say appeal order is passed on 10th Jan 2028. Now 1 year from 10th Jan 2028 will be 9th January 2029, or general time limit is what? 31st December 2028. These two, whichever is later. This special point is for the accounts and records related to that appeal, reference, revision or any investigation proceedings. General time limit is 72 months from due date of filing annual return. But any specific accounts, records related to such appeal, reference, revision or investigation, that should be retained for a span of 1 year after passing of order of appeal, reference, revision or investigation, or the general time limit 72 months from due date of annual return. These two, whichever is later. That's the end of story of this beautiful section, section 36, period of retention of accounts and records. Section 35 is what are the accounts and records that are required to be maintained. 36 is related to period of retention of accounts and records. That's the end of story of this small interesting topic known as accounts and records. Mala Services Limited is a supplier of management consultancy services. Wonderful, engaged in supply of services. It has approached you to ascertain the period for which the books of accounts or other records needs to be maintained. So what is the period for which you have to maintain, my dear friends? The books of accounts and records should be retained for a period of 72 months from due date of filing annual return. Further, the accounts and records related to any appeal or any other proceedings or any investigation or revision, then such records related to such appeal, revision or investigation should be retained for a period of 1 year after final disposal of appeal, revision or investigation, or for a span of 72 months from due date of filing annual return, whichever is later. Next question, guys. SL Groups has started making taxable supplies. You are required to advise it about the accounts and records required to be maintained by it as required under section 35 subsection 1. What are the accounts and records to maintain, my dear friends? Number 1, true and correct account of manufacture or production of goods, details of inward and outward supply, details of stock of goods, details of input tax credit, details of output tax payable and paid, or any other document and details as may be prescribed. Next question, my dear friends, a very small question, but this question came in exam couple of times for about 2 marks. See that. Swad Restaurant has opted for composition scheme. Can restaurant go for composition? Yes. In the current financial year, discuss the records which are not to be maintained by supplier opting for composition levy as enumerated in Rule 56. Friends, as we already discussed, composition registered person need not maintain 2 records. Number 1, records related to stock of goods. Number 2, records related to tax. When I say stock of goods, details related to stock procured, and not just stock procured but also the opening balance, receipt, supply made, goods lost, stolen, destroyed, disposed of, written off. All these details related to the stock need not be maintained. The logic is simple because composition registered person will directly pay tax on outward supply. He will not take input tax credit also. That is the reason why he need not maintain details of tax also. Output tax payable, paid, input tax credit, all these details he need not maintain. So there are 2 records which composition registered person need not maintain. Number 1, details of stock. Number 2, details of tax paid. So that's the end of story of this small interesting topic titled as accounts and records, in which we have got only 2 sections, section 35 and 36. There is a possibility that a 2 marks question may trigger in the exam.